Welcome back. It is the final edition of Taking the Reins, the preview show. That's because we are bringing you our final festival meeting of the Cape Summer season, and what a fantastic season it has been. We are ending off with the Splash Out Derby, and that is a Group 1 event over 2,000 meters for the sophomore crop. It has been a fantastic season for that bunch of horses, and we've seen the revelation Charles Dickens come out with a few knockout blows over the seasons, and he'll be looking to go for the first time 10 furlongs, and it's going to be a very, very intriguing race. Once again, I've got Jonathan Snaith with me. Jono, before we start touching on the card for Saturday, been a good summer season for Snaith Racing. How would you compare it to years gone by? Have you guys been happy? Did you hit all your targets?
I think, Justin was a little bit disappointed with Limerick Kings Plate Day. I think, Jet Doc, he missed his preparation when he fell at the track, and he didn't really have him at his peak. But I think he finished incredibly strongly on Met Day, and he's really hoping to end the season off the Cape Summer season on a high. I know he's put a tremendous amount of work into Saturday, and I can assure you that the horses are going to run particularly well.
Very, very good, and fantastic to have you, Peter Muscat. Thank you very much for joining us. You're fresh off the stable route from checking out the horses for the Bloodstock South Africa sale. Two things. You've been down here for a few months as a raider. It's been fantastic to have you. You've personally had a pretty good season, winning a whole bunch of races and cashing in on a few Race Cape Raider checks. How have you found the season at large? Obviously racing's been competitive, but your horses that have come from Natal have done very, very well in the last few months.
Yeah, thanks, Justin. I think the season's been fantastic. The spread put on by Cape Racing has been unbelievable. High quality racing, very competitive racing, and I've got quite a big team heading into Saturday's meeting, so hopefully we can take some more of your money back to Durban.
Absolutely, it'll be a pleasure to hand over some more checks. But let's jump into the opening leg of the Pick 6. The first event there is race 4. It's the Bloodstock South Africa Sales Cup for the fillies, and as we touched on there with Peter earlier, the BSA yearling sale is on Sunday, so make sure you get to Hollywood Bets Kenilworth and have a good look at the horses, because it is a sale which throws up some good graduates over the years, and this event is a very competitive one for the fillies, run at 10-2. We'll start with Jonathan. Jono, once again, you've got the leading light over here. I think number 9, Golden Sickle, Jonathan, ran a fantastic race, went 4th behind Raskova, Richard Ferree up, and very impressive on her debut when she put in a facile winning performance. What do you make of the race, and how is she going into this?
Justin, this mare is one to follow, Victorian Secret, who we trained as captain of filly, and this filly, if you look at her last run and on Met Day, she was incredibly unlucky. She came from the clouds, she was low level flying, and for me at level weights, I think she's going to take a ton of beating and possibly even a banker in the Pick 6. I know Kailami Girl, there's a little bit of support for her from the backyard, but I do think Golden Sickle's going to take a power beating in the first leg of the Pick 6.
Pete, PE runners normally do very well coming down to Cape Town with these juvenile races, and Alan Greef brings a fire away filly called Luna Halo, who was a facile winner by 5 lengths. Bernard Fade Herb takes the ride. Now, you've had a bit of success with your juvenile races here in Cape Town with Progeny of Fire Away, and you've got one coming up later in the card. Do you find them to be quite forward and quick?
They are. They seem to find themselves very quickly. I've got two in the yard at the moment, both similar types of horses, physically very, very forward and mature in themselves. They do find themselves quickly, and Alan's filly, she obviously won very impressively on debut, and as you say, those PE raiders can never be disregarded, and if she won that well at her first time of asking, she has to be a runner.
Absolutely. Jonathan, what about your other runner here, Witblitz? Good debut, running on very well, and then not the best of starts following up next time?
Witblitz, she very disappointing last time. I don't think she's doing particularly well, and if it wasn't for a sales race, when Suzette just take your chances, we probably wouldn't have run her. I do think she's going to be held by the stable companion.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for that. We'll move on to the next event, which is the Bloodstock South Africa Sales Cup. Now, this is the equivalent for Colts and Geldings, also after 1,200 meters, race 5. Now, this is an interesting, very, very interesting field of horses. It is quite open, more particularly So we obviously see these races throw up results over the years, juvenile races, and once again the Snaithyard with a strong contingent. But I think we'll start with you here, Peter. Talking about Fire Away a little bit earlier, you had this horse number 3, Accept Temptation. He's got Aldo de Meyer keeping the ride. And from draw 3, there's a lot of action up the straights at Hollywood Bets Kenilworth these days, and it tends to be where the predominant speed is run and where the finishing horses tend to make their runs. How is he going into this race, and are you confident of a good performance?
Well, first of all, Justin, he wasn't really wound up to win first time. I don't really believe in it. I don't feel it enhances their career down the line. So he has progressed, I think, very well since that first up win. I think the race that he ran in will finish up being a very strong form race. The second and third horse were particularly impressive as well. As I say, he has progressed, but my biggest concern with him is he's very coltish. His pre-race antics before his first run left a lot to be desired, but he is quite aggressive. But I think with natural improvement, he certainly has to be involved on Saturday.
Fantastic. And speaking of pre-race antics, Jonathan, the horse who probably ended up favourite here, number 7, Speeding Bullet, he was full of beans, to say the least. And he had, if I'm not mistaken, I think he had to come back to the track to be past retractable. But he was really hot and fired up, and he's got a lot of personality, let's just put it that way. I see he was gelded after that run. How has he taken that gelding, and his preparation coming into this?
Yeah, well spotted, Justin. I think last time out he was very heavy, and he's actually trimmed down just in a short space of time, and Justin's actually managed to sneak in the gallop. So I think, he's a horse that's got to be included, and this could be a wide open race. I do think Outlaw King is going to be the horse to beat on his debut, and he has a lot of the horses in this field held on that run. And you've got to respect Peter's horse. So I think this is quite an open race, and as you said earlier, it could very much throw a wild. One of these races, you've got to go field and pick the right race, because historically these races can really throw a wild result.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct, and especially when we don't have Peter, there's not too much form to go on, and juveniles from run 1 to run 2 can obviously change the form around quite a bit. And I'm not sure if you remember strongly, but that horse of Dean's, Outlaw King, that won here the other day, I mean, he was a super impressive horse, very good mover. And Dean's also similar to yourself. He's not really someone who you'd expect to get after his horses first time out. They do tend to show quite a bit of improvement. And he had a horse called Zumi just in behind him from the Brett Crawford yard, who's also not someone who really gets after his first timers too much. So a pretty open affair.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely correct there. I think these 2-year-olds can make significant improvement one run to the next. So without a lot of collateral form to work on, it's pretty difficult to sort of predict a result.
Yeah,
but there's some nice horses there.
I think so. Pretty wide in the exotics if you're not going to be going short there with the Snaith Runner, Speeding Bullet, and Dean Canameyer's number 10, Outlaw King. Let's move on to the next race, which is race 6, the City of Cape Town, Cape of Good Hope Nursery, Group 3 event now. This has seen a major raise in prize money up to 750,000 Rand, and forms part of the Summer Juvenile Series, which was conceptualized for the first time this season into a 3-legged series for the juvenile horses. Jono, before we get into the information and the depth, the analytics of this race, the Summer Juvenile Series, which we jumped up, I think the 3 races last season were worth a gross of about 600,000 Rand. We upped them to 1.8 million for the season, and it's most certainly had a profound effect on the juvenile field sizes, and most importantly, I think the actual quality of the juveniles we've seen in the early months.
I think what you don't factor in is, had we not, you had not come up with the Race Cape initiative, how bad the fields would have been, considering the population at the moment. So to actually go the other way and have these fields jam-packed this time of the year is absolutely extraordinary. And I think the success of the Race Cape was something that I don't think Cape Racing actually thought it would be such a success. And I must commend yourself and Cape Racing on such a great initiative, and it's a huge success, and I really think next year will take off even more, because it's year 1, you didn't expect such a result, and I think the fields, you're going to have to put on more races next year. So quicker return for the owners, and horses in the system earlier. I think it's a win-win for the operator and the owner.
Yeah, it's been quite something, and I think with hopefully a long-term plan of building the city of Cape Town, Cape of Good Hope nursery up from a Group 3, hopefully up the grades closer to Group 1 as the years go by. I think with a field of this nature, it's definitely a step in the right direction, because this is a super competitive run. But before we get to Peter, who's got a very interesting runner here, we're going to jump straight into the rerun. And that is of the Lancaster Bomber filly here, Raskova, winning. Now, Jono, you had a few runners in this race, and you've obviously got the leading Larcher, Gimme Lightning, in the main race on Saturday. But this was quite interesting. I thought, you see on the inside there, Golden Tatiana, Grant van Niekerk sort of goes to beat that horse, who's out in front, who's quite obviously going to hit the brick wall, the pace he's been going. And Christoph's just been biding his time in behind and picks up the pieces late on. And she actually wins quite impressively, Raskova. She wins going away at the end. Do you think any of the horses are going to be able to turn the table on her here, or do you think she has their measure?
Yeah, Justin, I think it was a masterful ride by Christopher, and I most certainly think some of the horses will turn the tables on her. And you know, I know Golden Sickle's not in this race, but if you watch it rerun again, just to highlight Golden Sickle again, who's running in one of the earlier races. And I think it's very important for not the pick six from a punter's perspective, is to watch these earlier races and see the collateral form. And if these horses win, it's obviously going to make a dramatic effect on what you're going to play in the following races. So I think a lot of form will be made up in the earlier juvenile races, and you've got to follow that throughout the day. And I think in this race in particular, I know Justin's particularly bullish on Gimme Lightning. He made a good decision not to run him on Met Day, give him a little bit more time. And he is not the type of horse that would normally run in these juvenile races, but because of the incentives of Race Cape, you get quality horses like this running. He could potentially be a Guineas horse in time, and I know Justin thinks very highly of him, and I think over the little bit extra, over the 6 furlongs, he's going to take a power beating.
Yeah, he definitely does look like a Guineas type of horse, and he obviously did give 5.5 kilos away to Golden Tatiana that day, and was doing some solid work late, was maybe a touch deep out of his ground, otherwise could have been a winner there. But it's been very competitive. What about this horse, Noonday Gun, also for Greg Bortz? Do you give him any shout at minor money?
So he's going to be taken out.
Is he going to be taken out?
Not entirely happy with him, and you kind of rush him into this race, and he's not going to take part.
Okay, perfect. So expect a scratching there come race day morning for number 7, Noonday Gun. Now let's go to you, Peter. Very interesting runner, because you've got a first-timer here in the nursery, which is a statement in its own right. A colt by Horizon, Evie's Horizon, number 6. Give us a little bit of background into him and how he's going at home. He's obviously showing you something to be running in a race like this first up.
I certainly wouldn't have even entered him in a race and brought him to Cape Town if I didn't think he had ability. He's a very well-made, very physically mature horse. He actually looks like a 3-year-old, to be quite honest. Very strong, very good level-headed horse. He's done everything correctly the whole time he's been here. He is a little bit heavy still, and hence he hasn't raced up to now, so we didn't have any options for him. And after discussion with the owners, we decided to take our chances on Saturday. I don't think he's going to be green, but his condition may just tell late with him, but for future reference, he is a very nice horse.
Have you managed to bring him to the course for a few gallops, or is he pretty much coming straight out of Milnerton?
No, he's been here twice. Okay. First gallop he was all at sea, didn't really latch on to what was required, but his second gallop was actually, I thought, very impressive. He galloped with a previous debut winner who ran again on Monday, and didn't disgrace himself at all. He ran 3rd. And this little bloke, or big bloke as he is, held his own against the older horse. So that gives you a good indication of sort of his level of ability. So it'll be very interesting to see how he goes, but I do think his condition will tell late.
Fantastic. So there's a horse to look out for. Very, very promising to see him debuting in the nursery. Jono, before we leave this race behind, I think it's worthy of a mention just to mention the Drockenstein pair of fillies coming out of the Bass Robinson yard. So you've got Winter Cloud, who is the sister to Clouds Unfold. Facile winner last time by 3 lengths, drawn 1. Fillies allowance, as we've seen over the years in juvenile races, very prevalent. The 2.5 kilos can make quite a difference at this stage. And then when we did see that rerun, we saw number 9, Distant Winter, another What a Winter filly, who was really low flying late, second in behind Raskova, and gets the stable jockey Aldo de Meyer aboard. They've got to be fillies with chances?
Yeah, and I think you've got to respect Aldo in terms of he needs to always get it right more times than not in terms of selecting the right rides in the yard. And I think you've got to respect the horse, but it's hard to take on colts of the caliber of Gimme Lightning. That's my opinion. I think, especially as a maiden, even at the 2.5 kilos, I just don't think it's enough. And I think it's probably a race. Once again, you never know with these juveniles, anything can go wrong. I know Just was super confident with Gimme Lightning last time out, and I think Richard was a little bit too far back. Another few strides he gets up, but I do think over the extra furlong, it's going to play into the hands of Gimme Lightning.
Fantastic. Well, that's the wrap-up of the City of Cape Town, Cape of Good Hope Nursery. While we've got a little bit of time before we go into our next segment, guys, let's touch on your other runners in the races we are not mentioning in detail. Peter, you've got Captain Bombshell in the first. Looks probably a horse that's almost nailed on to run in the first 3 in that race, and Alpha Betty in the second race. So how have they been going? How are their preps? Are you happy with everything going into their races?
Captain Bombshell has evolved since he's been in Cape Town. He was very headstrong, very temperamental, but he's settled down beautifully since he's been here. And I think because he's more relaxed in his work and not trying to overdo things, he's certainly furnished a lot. So as the months have gone on since he's been here, he's really strengthened up significantly. He hasn't really put a foot wrong in his races here to date, and his work has been very solid. So I think he's certainly, as you say, he certainly should earn on Saturday.
And Alpha Betty?
She's a very lightly raced filly and a very light framed filly. The plan wasn't initially to run her here. As you know, the conditions of the race were changed a couple of times. So originally it was a conditions race and not a level weight race. But we're here now, so we're taking our chances. On ratings, she's the lowest rated filly in the country, but potentially she is a very nice filly. I think she's still probably 6 months away from her best, but she's handled her racing well, and I think the step up to 10 furlongs is ideal for her. So we've got a ticket, we'll take our chance.
Absolutely. Jonathan, same race. You've got what probably be the horse to beat there in the Oaks. Silver Lynx, she looks like she's got all the scope in the world, being by Silvano out of Fort Wood Mare. Done everything right so far and looking for the trip.
Yeah, and I think, I know we initially discussed there was a chance that the race would be dropped back into an 1,800 metre trip in order to maximise the field size. But I'm glad we kept it at 2,000 because she's a filly that's looking for ultimately 2,400 metres. So I think on a form, and she probably would have won her last 3 races on the trot. I know Muzi found trouble at a penultimate, I think it was, and she was unlucky not to win that. But I do like a little bit of gold poker game sitting at 6-1. I think her form is amazing. She's going to love this trip, and I do think she's a danger. And I think she's probably more value with, I think, Silver Lynx somewhere around 15-10, which isn't the best value in this field. I think it's more open than the betting suggests.
We have to talk about Captain's Ransom in the Splash Out Prix de Cap. We've got a minute or so left. Third race on the card, not the biggest of fields, but I mean, this looks like a penalty kick.
No, she's got to be, we've had a discussion with Suzette and Barcy on her future plans, and everything's going to be hindered on this race. If she wins this and wins it well, you may see her racing again in South Africa, but they are very much want to do what's best for the filly. She's got a hell of a broodmare or a stud career ahead of her, and the horse comes first always, and we see how she goes. But in a field like this, she's got to be an absolute PA banker, and I think that she's got to take a power of beating.
Looks tailor-made for Captain's Ransom, and who knows, it could be her swan song. So if you are able to get a Hollywood's Bets Kenilworth to watch the champion in action for what might potentially be the last time, we might still see her in the season in KZN later on. Let's see, let's hold thumbs, but it does look like Captain's Ransom has that race at her mercy. We will be back after a short break with the second segment of Taking the Reins, the preview show. Race 7 is the Splash Out Jetmaster Stakes, a listed event over 1,600 meters, and what a competitive race it is, with a full field of 16 runners and some really talented horses that line up in this race, including the Lormrans Kings Plate winner, number 2, Almatana, who despite the fact that he has 62 kilos to shoulder, is literally thrown in at the weights, has about 9 pounds on the next best weighted runner, Zapatilius, and the Snaith runner, Nexus. Let's go straight into the rerun. Jono, we'll jump in with you. I know you love this race, the Lormrans Kings Plate. There's Almatana in the red sleeves coming for his outside run, and Charles Dickens in the Drachenstein stud colours going up the inside. Jet Dark and Cormit Yeding will come together within a few strides and make their run up middle to outside. And the bomb was dropped and the racecourse was pretty silent after this result, Chado. But Almatana, I mean, he's won a fantastic race here, and I think a lot of people didn't notice in the Met, the WSB Met, that he barely came off the bridle, this horse, because he couldn't get a run the whole length of the straight. What do you make of his chances here? I mean, he's got a big weight. I know you tend to probably think that performance was a little bit above himself, but this is a listed race. Surely he's got to have a big chance here.
Well, you know, if the handicappers are right, he wins this race and wins it well, because he's got the 2 draw. There's no excuses. He's got a top jockey up. Do I think he's a 133? Not in a lifetime. And I think the handicappers have blotched this one. That's my view, but I could be wrong, and he could win this race and win it well. But I think it's more open, this race, than the merit ratings would suggest. And I think there was, in looking at the Kings Plate preview, I thought it was a sensational ride by Bernard. You know, Bernard at his Group 1 race, I don't know how he does it, but he manages to get them up, found that outside rail. And I think you can owe that win to Bernard in my view. But I think this race is very open. And I think Sylvanas Dasher, I think Brett Crawford has done a tremendous job with this horse. He just continues to improve. And I have no doubt even though there's a 13 draw, he's probably the horse to beat. And the horse I really like of Justin's is Pakaya, sitting at 12-1. And he's got the 1 draw, JP van der Merwe up with 51. And if you watch the rerun last time out to Sylvanas Dasher, it was an unbelievable run by the horse. He had no right to run a place 200 out, and he absolutely took off on the outside. And he ran an incredible race. And I think, for me, at the odds of 12-1 is a nice each-way bet, but I do think Sylvanas Dasher is going to be the horse to beat.
Very interesting, because Pakaya, in his sophomore year, looked like a horse who could go all the way and be a potential Hollywood Bets Durban July type of horse. Maybe that's his calling as a 4-year-old, but he definitely has run a cracker on return. What about Striker and Nexus? They get on like a house on fire.
Yeah, you know, you can never write them off, because, you know, the only issue is the 16 draw. But, you know, Pierre, you can never write off with a horse like this. You know, finds it outside or something, you know, from the 16 draw, he finds a way through. This is a lively run, and I thought his run in the Met was an incredible run. And, you know, I know Pierre jumped off to ride Almatana in the Met. And, but in saying that, Muzi rode a fantastic race, and I thought he ran a great race as well. And I do think Warrior as well has got to be respected to some degree. He's a good horse. I don't know if he's at this sort of level. You've got horses that are slunging like Almatana at 133. It's very tough for a horse like Warrior. I think Warrior is more possibly a Durban July candidate. But for me, quite an open race. And I think here you've got to look for value. And I think a horse like Pakaya, each way bet is good value.
It is very open. And 2 of those runners who no doubt have a big winning chance here. Peter, your runners, 2 of your soldiers of the Cape Summer season, number 4, Imalenzi Yokadaduma. My Zulu is not that bad. And Quasi for Sure. Very impressive horses. I mean, Quasi for Sure is one stunning specimen. I mean, he really has done fantastically well too. Still quite lightly raced. But your other horse, I mean, he's campaigned in some proper strong races. Second in Nexus, second to Sylvanas Dasher after winning his debut run in the summer season. So he has not been outclassed in any shape or form. Has draw 4. How are your two guys going into this?
They're both going in very fit, happy horses, both low mileage horses. Both had concerns during their 3-year-old years, which fortunately we are on top of now. They're both very good in their actions at the moment, in very good form, and quite possibly both under the radar too, from a handicapping perspective, because they're so lightly raced. I couldn't be happier with both of them, and bar the draw with Quasi for Sure, he's in the same boat as Nexus. I would be pretty confident with him, because I think he is he is very progressive. But in saying that, the other horses, his work has been outstanding. Once again, we have a ticket times 2. We've got to take our chances.
Yeah, and you've got to be pretty hopeful that, say, come end of July, Imalenzi Oko de Duma is going to be a lot higher than 101, and Kwasi for sure is probably going to be a lot higher than a 98 as well. So definitely a lot of room in the ratings. Not that this is a handicap, but just shows you that they probably, even though they are essentially badly weighted, probably not as far as their ratings suggest.
100%. As I say, I think they're both under the radar from a handicapping perspective, and no, they fit well. We've got to have a go.
Looking for big runs. Fantastic. Let's move on to the big one. Race 8 is the Splash Out Cape Derby Group 1 2,000 meters. It's being run this year for an improved 1.5 million rand, and what a race this promises to be. We have the leading 10 furlong horses of the sophomore crop, bar 1 or 2 horses which have elected to give the race a skip for targets later on. But let's dive straight into the rerun. We've pulled our Charles Dickens emphatic win in the Group 1 Hollywood Bets Cape Guineas, and you see him there 3 parts of the way back on the rail. Aldo rolls him out for a middle to outside run, and he puts the race to bed. Now, Jono, we're looking at this because we're trying to decide here, number 1, is he going to stay 2,000 meters? Number 2, does he actually need to stay 2,000 meters properly in order to win this? And I think there's probably a little bit of precedent if we go back a few years or maybe a decade now, but Cape Town Noir was a horse who was proven in his career to be an out-and-out miler. Not that Charles Dickens has proven that yet, but Cape Town Noir ran in the Derby 2000, and he didn't necessarily stay, but he still won it, and that's because he was about 15 pounds superior to the field. Similar type of look about this. If Charles Dickens stays or not, you'd probably think that because he's got so many lengths to spare on the field in raw ability, he's got to have enough to see this out, surely.
You know, you just, even the second horse, he's 18 points ahead of At My Command, which means he beats him by 9 lengths. So I think even if he doesn't stay, my view is, you know, I know the family quite well. We train his full brother, Somerset Maugham, who kind of is an 800 meter specialist. And we train a Savannah out of the mare as well, which also doesn't seem to get 2,000 meters. He's probably best over 1,400 Steinbeck. So I don't think on paper he'll stay. That's my view. But I don't think he has to stay. You know, I think this field is not a strong Derby. At My Command also has stamina doubts. You know, I said last time out when we sat on the same show, when he was a short favourite, I just thought a Karari out of a National Assembly mare, very, very tricky to stay. So for me, Justin does have stayers in the race, the horses that will stay all day. Are they quite good enough? You know, that's really the question. And I think Charles Dickens is just streets ahead of this field. So on raw ability, even if it's a good tempo, he should still have the measure of this field.
Of your horses, Rockpool's got to be the right one, I'm guessing. But he's really had a come-on look about him throughout the season. But from what, reading between the lines, I mean, look, he's 101. I mean, there's no chance he's going to be 101 this time next year. But he might not be 120, which is what he probably needs to be to beat Charles Dickens. So maybe a horse for the money, but obviously it's hard to be confident. But would I be right in saying that he's probably the stable elect there?
I would say marginally, you know, and I think that a horse that's really just improved lengths and lengths is Mucho de Niro. I think he's far better than his form. He was incredibly unlucky not to win his last race. Everything went wrong, and he still almost got up to win. I think his horse just absolutely taken off. And with Grant Funny Cook-up, he knows how to win big Group 1 races. And one thing about these horses, they'll be staying all day, and they'll be flying home over the trip. They'll stay all day, and it's you know, I think to run second or third in the Derby is a feat in its own. So I think Nick was very keen. He loves the Derby, and he also wanted to support the race. As we had a discussion that if it was a 4-horse field, it would not do justice for this race, and I think it would be a slight embarrassment to racing to have a Derby of 4 runners. So Nick was very sporting and just said, you know, make sure that there's enough runners in the race. And, you know, I would love nothing more. And I know it gutted the team were Gaynor and Drakenstein on Limaral Kingsplate Day, so it would be delightful if they could go through and win the Derby, because I know he's a possible stallion prospect in time. And everyone likes to see these types of horses winning, so it's good for racing.
And kudos to them for throwing him in the deep end, essentially, because very often horses like this can stay in their comfort zone. Peter, what have you made of the Charles Dickens show this summer? You've obviously been on the outside looking in. What do you make of him, trip-wise, ability-wise? Is he the real deal? Is he a miler? What do you think from his running style?
I think essentially down the line, I think his ultimate trip will be a mile. But as you've alluded to, it's not an overly strong Derby field. He seems to settle very well, so no matter what tempo they get early, he looks like he's going to relax wherever Aldo positions him. But I think his biggest attribute is his phenomenal turn of foot. So if he's not too far off them turning in, whatever pace they go in at, I think he'll put them to bed quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. And Brett's horse At My Command, I mean, he's an imposing, impressive horse, as Jono said. More bred for a quick mile, but he's running on at that 1800. I mean, he's got to be in with a shout if he sees out the trip, but probably a bit of stamina doubts there.
I would think so. The horse I was most impressed with, and I think he's probably going to be the most progressive in time, was Rockpool. Fantastic action horse. He looks like a puppy still. 6 months' time, he's going to be probably an imposing individual, and down the line, I think he's going to really put his hand up if he goes to Durban, and you'll see a lot more of him, I think, in time.
Very progressive sort, number 11, Rockpool, but does he have enough ability to run down Charles Dickens? That's going to be the question in the Splash Out Cape Derby. It's going to be an intriguing race nonetheless, and we look forward to seeing a spectacular contest. Let's move on to race 9. The Kaya Stables Diadem Stakes, a Group 2 sprint event over 1,200 meters, will be run at 10 to 5. And keeping in the theme with the other sprint races we've seen through the Cape Summer season, a really, really competitive field of some good sprinters. We've taken a bit of a knock, Jono, in the sprint department in the last few years, with a couple of the older brigade retiring and moving on. But it's been good to see that this season there's been a couple horses put their hands up as pretenders to the throne of the top sprinter position, and one of those, under no uncertain terms, a horse you were very confident of running a big race last time, was that number 4, Gimme a Prince. The question mark was the 1,000 going to be a little bit too short? But we'll jump into the rerun of the Cape Fly and we'll get the answer, because he was a very impressive winner. Jono, you had Rio Kirari in here, who's in the blue and the white with the sheepskin noseband at the back. A lot of ground to make up, but absolutely low flying at the death. He's got to be a big runner here, surely.
I think he was quite unlucky not to get up, and he's definitely coming back to his best. And, when Rio's at his best, his form he had in his earlier career was just devastating. He went to Joburg, won the Group 1 there, and he was kind of untouchable in the prime of his career. So he's coming back, and I think with the extra furlong, he could turn the tables on this horse. And, we sat on the show just coming into the Met, and these are the two horses we like, 20 to 1 and 10 to 1, and they ran first and second. And I don't think there's going to be much change here. I would throw Wee Jamming into the mix. I think he loves the Kenilworth 1,200. He's just, his strike rate is phenomenal over the course and distance. So I don't think it's as open as the race suggests. I think those two plus Wee Jamming, you'll probably be safe.
And Wee Jamming, you had the blinkers on last time. Was that because down to 1,000 meters, now up and trip, blinkers off?
Yeah, and he's always done well at the Kenilworth 1,200 without the blinkers, and it was just to sharpen him up, which did the trick. He ran a great race over the 5. But there's a debate within, I know, with Justin and my father. My father thinks this horse should be going 2,200 meters in the Durban July. So it's going to be very interesting when this horse gets to Durban, because they're going to try him. And if he runs in the July, I'll be very wrong.
Pete, you've got a runner in here, a Group 1 winner in his own right, as we saw in the back end of that replay there. He got his ground taken up at a crucial stage and never really picked it up after that and finished downfield. But he was only 2 lengths behind in the penultimate start, and hasn't quite recaptured his form in quite a while. But you haven't had him forever. You've had him probably a year or so. How is he going, Battle Force? Are you hoping for a bit of a form return?
Well, as you say, he got pretty badly hampered in the Cape Lion Championship. He's a big, long striding horse, and he was just starting to unwind when Rio Kirari took up his running, and he was halted to almost a standstill. So it's no surprise that he didn't really pick up again. But I think if he'd if he'd had a clear run without the interference, I think he would have finished right on top of them, because he's, as I say, he's a big, long striding former Group 1 winner. He had a long break after his Durban season, and he's taken a while to come back to his best, but since the Cape line, he's really blossomed. His work's been particularly pleasing. He's great, moving great, and step up to 6 furlongs is obviously very much in his favour. He's still got to obviously find quite a bit of ground on the leading contenders, but I think he'll run a much improved race.
What would you make the horses to beat? As we're looking at the market, Give Me a Prince, Rio Kirari, are those the ones for you? What about a horse like Cosmic Highway, Trip of Fortune, who won over a mile recently and now is coming back in Trip? I mean, those are all very good horses on their day.
I think Dean's horse has been pretty dominant the whole season in the Sprint Series. I think he certainly is the horse to beat. Rio Kirari, a phenomenal run at his last start. I think those are the two principals, and everybody's got to aim at those two, I think.
Absolutely. I think the market looks pretty spot on there in the Kaya Stables Diadem Stakes, and a big shout out to Kaya Stables for their fantastic support over the Cape summer season and of this race. It is a Group 2 being run for 600,000, and a big reason of that is because of the direct stakes sponsorship from the team. And wouldn't it be fitting to see Give Me a Prince or Cosmic Highway feature prominently in the race for them? Peter, I'm going to come to you. You've given us a good summary of your runners on the day. If you're going to have a winner or two, what would you nail down, do you think, as your best runners?
I'd probably say Captain Bombshell. He really seems to be coming into his own. And the 2-year-old, Accept Temptation, they would probably be my best.
Those would be your best. Have you had a good look around the sales yet, or are you still planning to do some legwork tomorrow?
Yeah, we've had a kick-off today. There's obviously some high-quality stock here. We'll do some further investigation tomorrow, and I'm sure we'll come up with a few.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for being here. Jono, I know you've got a host of runners. What do you think is the best?
You know, I would say Gimme Lightning with Golden Sickle, playing around with Pakaya 12-1. I think if you take those 3 horses, play doubles, win place doubles, I think you'll have a good day. I think those are the 3. Justin's super confident with good runs, and possibly Rio Kirari in the back to turn the tables. So, and I must just take a special mention to Cape Racing and your team on just a phenomenal season, and you know, from the last 3-4 years to where they are now. It's just incredible, and thank you to Greg Bortz, Cape Racing, Hollywood Bets. It's been absolutely tremendous and exciting to see, just come to the course and see happy people, happy customers, happy people working here, and it's been a good 10-15 years since I've seen that, so kudos to the team.
It has been a fantastic season, and it's definitely been aided by some phenomenal horseflesh and some superstars that have been performing over the Cape summer season. And we are ending our summer festival on Saturday with the Splash Out Cape Derby, and let's hope it goes off with a bang. It's going to be a fantastic weekend of horse racing and, of course, the horse auction, the Bloodstock South Africa yearling sale, which is going to be on Sunday. So make sure you're at Hollywood Bets Kenilworth for Saturday and Sunday, a weekend festivities of horse racing and sales. Enjoy and happy punting.